Welcome back once again to my educational channel on biology. Teacher Janet here. In this lesson, we are going to discuss the miracle of life, that is, the amazing development of the human embryo starting from the formation of a zygote after fertilization, when the sperm and the ovum fuse together, when the nucleus of the sperm and the nucleus of the ovum fuse together, right? And starting from there, after fertilization, there's the formation of the zygote. And we are going to look at the different stages of development of the zygote and the embryo until it implants in the wall of the uterus. Okay, developing from embryo to fetus. We are going to also discuss the structure of the uterus, the placenta, and the umbilical cord during pregnancy. We'll also look at the role of certain hormones in pregnancy. Let's begin. The learning standards for this lesson are as follows. Firstly, we should be able to describe the fertilization process and the formation of a zygote. Okay, some of this has been studied in the lower forms, all right? But we are going to expand on that and study in more detail. Number two, make a sequence and explain the early development of the embryo until implantation. That is, the development of the embryo from a two-celled embryo to form the morula and then the blastocyst. So we'll find out what the meaning of these terms are, morula and blastocyst. Number three, explain the role of the human chorionic gonadotropin hormone, HCG, in the early stages of pregnancy. So this is an important hormone produced in the early stages of pregnancy, HCG. Fourthly, we'll communicate about the roles of the following structures in the development of a fetus. All right, so in the uterus, during the development of a fetus, there's the structure called the placenta, which develops, and number two, the umbilical cord. So we're going to find out the roles of these two parts. Next, lastly, we should be able to justify the necessity for separate fetal and maternal blood circulatory systems. Now let's refer to the overview of the concept map for Chapter 15, Sexual Reproduction, Development, and Growth in Humans and Animals. In the previous video, we discussed the changes in the levels of hormones during pregnancy, miscarriage, and also premenstrual syndrome and menopausal syndrome. So now we're at this point here, right? We're going to discuss the development of the human fetus, that is, three aspects: the fertilization process and formation of zygote, the role of the placenta and umbilical cord in the development of a fetus, and necessity for separate fetal and maternal blood circulatory systems. And in the next video, we'll discuss the formation of twins. So let's start out with the first learning standard. I'll put it as in the form of a question, right? So firstly, we ask ourselves this question, all right, which can be asked in the exam. Describe the fertilization process that occurs in the fallopian tube of a woman, and then the formation of a zygote, right? Right. So let's start with the first event, the process of fertilization. Okay. Now, firstly, a sperm penetrates the secondary oocyte in the fallopian tube, right? So if sperms get into the female reproductive system, then they will swim towards the fallopian tube and they'll be attracted to chemicals released by the ovum, and then they will swim towards the ovum. And a very few sperms will reach the ovum. Okay, a lot of them will die on their journey to reach the ovum. All right, so remaining a few hundred sperms. Then one sperm will penetrate the secondary oocyte in the fallopian tube of the female reproductive system. Right now, so here we can see the sperm, all right, in this picture on the right, and it penetrates the secondary oocyte in the fallopian tube, penetrates the layers, all right, surrounding the secondary oocyte, which is the immature ovum. So the sperm has a part called the acrosome, all right, the acrosome, which is an organelle that releases enzymes to digest the outer membrane of the secondary oocyte. So as the sperm penetrates the secondary oocyte, changes will occur to the secondary oocyte membrane here that prevents penetration. Changes will occur to the secondary oocyte membrane that prevents the penetration by other sperms, right? So only one sperm can enter the cell of the secondary oocyte into the cytoplasm. So once the sperm enters the secondary oocyte, okay, now this is the cytoplasm of the secondary oocyte. Here we have the first polar body, which is another cell, okay, that's produced beside the secondary oocyte during meiosis 1, all right? So this first polar body is not used at all, okay? It's the secondary oocyte that's in the important cell, okay, and carries the chromosomes for the next generation, right? So once the sperm enters the secondary oocyte, the nucleus of this oocyte undergoes a second meiotic division, that is meiosis 2, to form an ovum and a second polar body. Okay, so this is not shown here, but another polar body will be formed, and then this secondary oocyte will become the real ovum, okay, the female gamete. Then fertilization occurs whereby the nucleus of the sperm, which has entered the cytoplasm here, the nucleus of the sperm will fuse with the nucleus of the ovum and form a diploid zygote, okay, because sperm has one set of chromosomes and the ovum of the egg has another set of chromosomes. So when these two sets of chromosomes join together or come together, they will form a diploid condition. Okay, so the zygote form is a single cell organism that has two sets of chromosomes, one from the male parent and one from the female parent. Okay, so it's a diploid zygote. So zygote is actually just a fertilized egg, an egg that's undergone fertilization. So we must know the definition for fertilization. Fertilization is the process in which the nucleus of a sperm fuses with the nucleus of an ovum to form a diploid zygote. Now let's discuss learning standard number 2 or question 2. Make a sequence and explain the early development of an embryo until implantation, until it attaches itself, until the embryo attaches itself to the wall of the uterus. Okay, so we are going to discuss the formation of the two-celled embryo, which contains only 2 cells, and then the morula, which is a ball of cells as seen here, and finally the blastocyst, which is a ball of cells with a hollow center that's fluid-filled. So in this picture, you see the blastocyst, right? A ball of cells with a hollow center that is fluid-filled. So straight away, I want to give you this table, which is part of my smart notes, so that it's easy for you to see the sequence, okay, of events that occur and the names of the stages in the development of the embryo, okay, and fetus. Now, we are going to discuss this in more detail, but let's look at the timeline first here. So ovulation means the process whereby the secondary oocyte is released into the fallopian tube from the ovary. Okay, so that occurs every month in the menstrual cycle. So let's say the ovulation occurs and a secondary oocyte is released into the fallopian tube, okay, of the female reproductive system. Then as it travels through the fallopian tube, if it meets the sperm and the sperm penetrates into the ovum, and then the nucleus of the sperm fuses with the nucleus of the ovum, then we get the process of fertilization occurring. So fertilization occurs in the fallopian tube and the zygote is formed. All right. Now, what is a zygote? It is a diploid cell formed through fertilization when the nucleus of the ovum fuses with the nucleus of the sperm. Okay, the nucleus of an ovum fuses with the nucleus of a sperm. So the zygote then moves along the fallopian tube to the uterus after fertilization. In the fallopian tube, there are many cilia or hair-like structures that will sweep the zygote down. The zygote itself cannot move by itself, all right? It's swept down the fallopian tube by the cilia inside the fallopian tube. Then it undergoes mitosis. Along the way, you will start to undergo mitosis. One cell divides to form 2 cells. So 2-celled embryo is formed. Then each of the cells of the embryo continue to divide by mitosis. So from 2 cells, 4 cells are formed, okay? And then 8 cells. Every time we must times 2, right? And from 8 cells, a solid ball of cells, around about 16 cells are formed. So this is the start of the formation of the morula. Okay. Later we find out the meaning of this word or the origin of this word morula. Okay. Okay. So this is the ball of cells called the morula. Now, morula is a solid ball of cells formed during the development of the embryo. All these are already stages of the embryo, starting from the two-celled embryo, okay, according to our textbook. Two cells, an organism that has two cells, okay, formed after after the zygote divides, is already an embryo, all right? So the morula, which is a stage in the development of the embryo, consists of many cells. It's a solid ball of cells without any hollow center, and it has 16 to 32 cells around that. Okay, from 16 cells it can divide to form 32 cells. It's still called morula. Then it continues to divide by mitosis, and as it grows it will form a hollow center, so that will become a blastocyst. Okay, try and say this word. Say the word morula. Okay, morula, and then blastocyst. Okay, so a blastocyst is a hollow ball of cells with a fluid-filled cavity in the center here, right? So it has an outer layer of cells here, right? And this hollow center begins to form inside the morula. Then there are a group of cells here. We call it the thickened cell wall here. Now this group of cells in orange is the one, are the cells that will develop to form the embryo, later stages of the embryo, and the fetus later on. Okay, whereas the outer layer of cells will attach itself to the wall of the uterus later on, okay, and form the placenta. So blastocyst has about 200 to 300 cells, okay, starting from maybe around 70 cells or so. Then it will divide by mitosis actively, and then finally it will have 200 to 300 cells. Okay. Now, that's on the 5th day. The blastocyst is formed on the 5th day. And actually, by the 4th or 5th day, the ball of cell, or the morula, is already found in the uterus. Okay, from the fallopian tube that's gone down to the uterus. So, on the 7th day, after the blastocyst is formed, on the 7th day, implantation occurs. What is implantation? It is the process whereby the blastocyst, which is the early stage embryo, the young embryo, attaches itself to the endometrium, or the layer of blood and tissues in the wall of the uterus. Okay? So implantation is the process whereby the blastocyst attaches itself to the wall of the uterus. Okay? That's on the 7th day, around the 7th day. Then, now that's the first week. So next, the embryo will continue to grow, and then it will attach itself there, and the placenta will be formed, okay, to supply the embryo with nutrients, oxygen, and to take away or remove the waste substances from the embryo. Okay, so the word embryo means the developing organism. Okay, usually in the mother's, in the case of humans, is in the mother's uterus, the developing organism in the mother's uterus, in the earlier stages of growth, from the two-cell stage till the first 8 weeks of growth. Okay, first 8 weeks will be about 2 months, until 2 months of growth. Now, then after that, in the 9th week until birth, it is this growing or developing organism is called a fetus. So a fetus is the developing organism in the uterus from 9 weeks or 2 months onwards till birth. Okay, so it's until 40 weeks. We usually say until 36 weeks, which is 9 months. But actually, this has been revised to by certain associations, all right, at the time, okay, the period of time of pregnancy till full term is about 40 weeks, all right. So the fetus is the organism that is more developed than the embryo, and it has in the fetus the organs like the heart, okay, the fingers, the legs, and all that start to form more clearly, all right, and start to develop to form the complex structures and complex organs. So just now we've discussed the early development of the embryo. until implantation. Let's say it's in the form of a question. You get this question, explain the early development of an embryo until implantation, 5 marks, okay, for essay question or structured question. So let's discuss the essay answer. All right, just now we just discussed the table, so let's try to find out how to write it in an essay format. Now, first of all, there's ovulation, according to this diagram here. Based on this diagram, ovulation occurs, that's the release of the secondary oocyte into the fallopian tube, right? And then fertilization occurs in the fallopian tube, whereby the nucleus of the sperm fuses with the nucleus of the ovum here, right? Now, next, the fertilization, the zygote is formed and it travels down the fallopian tube, right? So it undergoes multiple cell divisions through mitosis, and it will form the 2 cells first from the first cell division. So this is called a 2-cell embryo. Then further cell divisions will produce an embryo with 4 cells, 8 cells, and finally about 16 cells. So this is called a morula. Okay, further cell divisions produce a solid ball of cells called the morula. Okay, then number 3, the morula divides by mitosis and then transforms into a blastocyst, which is a hollow ball of cells. So it forms a hollow center here that is filled with fluid, right? So blastocyst is a hollow ball of cells with a fluid-filled cavity in the center. Next, the blastocyst will move to the wall of the uterus, to the endometrium in the wall of the uterus, and it will implant itself in the endometrium through a process called implantation, right? So must mention these processes like fertilization, then implantation, and also the process mitosis. Next, the blastocyst continues to grow from the embryo stage into a fetus, okay, and the placenta will be formed in the wall of the uterus to supply nutrients to the embryo for it to grow, okay. So look at all the important keywords like zygote, 2-cell embryo, morula, blastocyst, implantation, then the formation of the fetus. Okay, all these are important. And then the processes like mitosis, fertilization, mitosis, and implantation. So here are further pictures to help your understanding. We already discussed the notes, especially the one in the table format. All right, I hope you can copy that into your notebook. And here we're just going to look at some pictures to further increase our understanding. Okay, so this is a close-up picture of all the stages of development of the embryo. Okay, so here we have the fertilization. Okay, fertilization occurs in the fallopian tube, whereby the nucleus of an ovum fuses with the nucleus of a sperm, and then this forms the fertilized egg or the diploid zygote. Diploid zygote undergoes mitosis many times, firstly to form 2 cells, then 4 cells, then 8 cells, and then finally a 16-cell embryo called the morula, which is a solid ball of cells. Morula then undergoes mitosis to form the blastocyst, which is different because it has a fluid-filled cavity compared to the morula, which doesn't have a fluid-filled cavity. Okay, so this is a close-up picture of the blastocyst. We can see that it has 3 parts. The first part is the trophoblast, the outer layer of cells. This trophoblast will be implanted into the endometrium here, and it will develop to form the placenta, which is the site of exchange of substances between the embryo and the mother. Okay, so we'll talk about the placenta later. Now, the second part of the blastocyst is the inner cell mass, or the thickened blastocyst wall here, okay, which forms or develops further to form the embryo and then the fetus. Then inside here, there's the fluid-filled cavity, right? So here we see the process of implantation occurring, whereby the blastocyst attaches itself to the endometrium in the wall of the uterus. Okay, implantation of blastocyst on endometrium in uterine wall. So here again is a diagram that shows the early development of the embryo. So this part has been discussed earlier, all right, in the previous slides. Now, this is a fun fact. The morula is a solid ball of cells formed through mitosis from the zygote, right? And its name is actually derived from its resemblance to a mulberry fruit. Okay, So mulberry is a common plant in Malaysia also, and it has a lot of health benefits now. This mulberry has little fruits like that, little berries like that sticking to it. So it looks like the morula, okay, which consists of the cells, okay, a solid ball of cells, consists of a lot of cells. So the cells look like these tiny berries here, right? And the mulberry, the genus or its category is morus. This is part of its name. So that's where I get the word morula, right? Now here we see the growth of the embryo at 1 month and then 2 months. And after 3 months, it starts to become, it's called a fetus already, right? So what's the difference? Now, embryo, for the embryo, the body features not much developed, not well developed yet. Okay, you can hardly see the shape of a head or the fingers and so forth. But at about 4 months, the fetus is formed, and it has the body features of the developing fetus are clearer and easily identified. Okay, as for a normal human being, you can see the formation of the eyes, the ears, hands, and legs. Okay, clearly, and the toes also. So, and then inside the body, the heart and other organs are being formed, although they are not yet mature. So, through the period of a few more months, the organs will start to mature. Okay, until the 40th week. So 40th week is actually about 10 months, not 9 months. Okay, so it has been revised. Previously, we thought 9 months is the full term pregnancy. Okay, time for the full term pregnancy. But now, 10 months is the standard. Okay, it is 40 weeks. And this one you can also refer to the to Google and various sources to find out more, because at around 36 weeks to 40 weeks, there's still development of organs like the lungs and other parts, all right, for the baby to reach maturity, for the fetus to reach maturity before it's launched. So at 9 months, it turns around and the head will face the cervix in preparation for birth. Third learning standard or question: explain the role of the human chorionic gonadotropin hormone, HCG, in the early stages of pregnancy. So what is this hormone, HCG? A new hormone that we are studying. So here's an important question. Explain the role of the human chorionic gonadotropin or HCG hormone in the early stages of pregnancy. 4 marks, okay? Now, so this is a new hormone that we are studying, human chorionic gonadotropin hormone or HCG, okay? H, C, and G. So after an embryo implants in the uterine wall during pregnancy, then the placenta will develop, okay, once the embryo or blastocyst implants in the wall of the uterus. Now, the placenta will develop and then it will start producing human chorionic gonadotropin or HCG hormone during the pregnancy. So, the HCG hormone levels increase very quickly in the early stages of pregnancy. It doubles every 2 to 3 days for the first 4 weeks of pregnancy. Now, what's the function of the HCG? The main function of HCG is actually to stimulate the structure called the corpus luteum in the ovary to continue secreting two hormones, estrogen and progesterone, in the early stages of pregnancy. That means the first 3 months of pregnancy. So actually, the corpus luteum was formed when the Graafian follicle burst during ovulation, and the secondary oocyte was released into the fallopian tube. Okay, so the remains of the Graafian follicle forms the corpus luteum, and then corpus luteum starts to secrete the hormones estrogen and progesterone during the menstrual cycle. But if there's pregnancy, it needs to continue secreting the estrogen and progesterone, okay, beyond the uh, the days, the 14 days that it has started producing these hormones. Okay, so it has to continue secreting estrogen and progesterone for the next 3 months in order to maintain the thickness of the endometrium. Okay, for the estrogen and progesterone to maintain the thickness of the endometrium so that the embryo or blastocyst can implant into the endometrium and then grow there. Okay, so because it needs to continue producing estrogen and progesterone beyond that menstrual cycle, it needs this hormone HCG to stimulate it so that it will continue secreting these hormones for the next 3 months. Then the endometrium, the thickness of the endometrium will be maintained for the implantation of the blastocyst or embryo and for the growth of the embryo. Okay, so that the endometrium is thick and full of blood and tissues and is able to, and there the placenta will be formed for exchange of substances between mother and fetus. So the function of HCG is to stimulate the corpus luteum to continue secreting the hormones estrogen and progesterone for the next 3 months. All right. Now here we see the summary of it. In the second week of pregnancy, the placenta will secrete the hormone HCG, okay, which stimulates the corpus luteum in the ovary here to secrete estrogen and progesterone for the next 3 months of pregnancy. But after 3 months, will still degenerate finally. It will break down. So what is going to help secrete the estrogen and progesterone after that during pregnancy? It is the placenta itself, okay, that will take over the role to secrete estrogen and progesterone during the pregnancy. Okay, these hormones are needed during the pregnancy to carry out certain functions. Okay, so for the question here, explain the role of HCG hormone. Our answer will be number 3 and 4. Okay, the asterisk part. What's the function of HCG? Now the pregnancy test. So HCG hormone can be detected in the urine of pregnant women. Only pregnant women will secrete the hormone HCG from the placenta because the placenta is only produced when the woman is pregnant. Okay, so pregnancy tests will aim to detect the presence of HCG in order to confirm that the woman is pregnant, and its accuracy is 99%. See? Okay, so a positive urine pregnancy test means that HCG hormone is detected in the urine of the woman, and this confirms that the woman is pregnant. Okay, so this HCG hormone is present in the urine. It's passed out in the urine of a pregnant woman. So in the pregnancy test, first the pregnancy kit is bought. So this is the apparatus, okay, or the stick that is used to detect the presence of HCG. Now the tip here can absorb urine, and then there are certain chemicals to detect the presence of HCG, okay, inside this stick. So the urine can, the woman can pee or urinate, and then in the stream of urine, this stick will be held there, will be exposed to the urine, so that the tip can absorb the urine. Or the woman can collect the urine in a container, and then after that dip the stick into the urine for about 10 seconds or more. After that, they look at the panel here, the display panel here. If there's only one line, shows that the person is not pregnant, the woman is not pregnant. Lines here indicate that the woman is pregnant. Okay. The two red lines indicate that there's the presence of HCG hormone in the urine and that the woman is pregnant. So here's an extra graph which can help you understand better the roles and the presence of the 3 hormones or the levels of the 3 hormones during pregnancy. Okay, so HCG, estrogen, and progesterone are 3 hormones that are found in a pregnant lady. All right. Now, firstly, HCG, as we know, now this is the same summary. So during the second week, the placenta of pregnancy, the placenta in the pregnant woman will secrete the HCG hormone, and the level of HCG will rise very quickly. All right. And it will stimulate the corpus luteum here in the ovary to continue to secrete estrogen and progesterone for 3 months or 12 weeks, right? So that the thickness of the endometrium can be maintained for implantation of the embryo or blastocyst, right? And so that the embryo can grow, being connected to the uterus, right? Now, but after that, okay, what is the function of HCG hormone as we discussed just now? It is to stimulate the corpus luteum to secrete more estrogen and progesterone. So the level of the hormone estrogen and progesterone do not decrease, but rather it will slowly increase. All right. But after the 12th week or 3 months, the corpus luteum degenerates, right? So it can no longer secrete the estrogen and progesterone. So from then on, the placenta secretes the estrogen and progesterone. The placenta that has developed, okay, in the uterus will start to secrete these two hormones, and so the level of these two hormones start to rise quite quickly, all right, during the pregnancy. So these hormones are very important in pregnancy. For example, progesterone can prevent the contraction of the uterus so that the uterus will keep growing, expanding to cater to the needs of the growing fetus also. Okay, so if there's not enough progesterone, the uterus will start to contract, and then this may cause miscarriage to occur. All right. Question 4. Explain the roles of the following structures in the development of a fetus. The role of the placenta and the umbilical cord. So let's discuss the role of the placenta and the umbilical cord in fetal development. Now, the first picture here shows you the embryo or the fetus inside the mother's uterus. So this is the embryo of fetus, and it is surrounded by a fluid called the amniotic fluid. Okay, the amniotic fluid, which has the function of protecting the fetus from injuries by acting as a cushion and shock absorber, especially when the mother were to fall, right, or hit something. So this amniotic fluid also protects the fetus from temperature changes by maintaining a normal temperature due to the water inside the fluid here, right, can absorb a lot of heat without much change in temperature. All right, so apart from that, it allows the fetus, the fluid allows the fetus to move freely for muscle and bone development. So this fluid is inside the amniotic sac. Okay, the amniotic fluid is inside a bag or sac called the amniotic sac that is surrounded by two membranes. The inner membrane is the amnion, and the outer membrane is called the chorion. Right. So as for the fetus or embryo, it is attached to the mother by means of the umbilical cord. Okay, the umbilical cord. So in this way, it can obtain its nutrients like glucose and oxygen from the mother and remove its waste products like urea and carbon dioxide. Okay, and let's look at the structure of the umbilical cord first of all. So let's go on to this second picture here. Now, this lower part here shows you the umbilical cord, okay, at this point here. And if we cut through the section of the umbilical cord, we can see that it has one umbilical vein in red here and two umbilical arteries that are shown in blue here. Okay, so this umbilical vein and the umbilical arteries also branch out to form a lot of fetal blood capillaries that project inside the placenta. Okay, so let's talk about the umbilical cord first of all. So inside we have the umbilical vein and two umbilical arteries. Now, what is the umbilical vein in red? It shows that it transports blood that is oxygenated, has oxygen in it, from the mother's blood, okay, to the fetus, okay, to the fetus. So from mother's blood to the fetus. Now, can I look at the picture here? Okay, this one here, to show the, which is similar to the one here, all right? You can see the red structure is actually the umbilical vein, and it transports glucose and oxygen from the mother, okay, from the mother's blood here. This pink part is the mother's blood. So the glucose and oxygen will diffuse into the fetal blood capillaries from the maternal blood or mother's blood here, the pink part here. And then the glucose and oxygen are transported by the blood capillaries, and finally the blood vessels here, and finally the umbilical vein back to the fetus. Okay, then the glucose is used for, glucose and amino acids will be used for the development of the fetus, and oxygen is used for respiration. Okay, so all these are obtained from the mother. And as for the umbilical artery, they are in blue. Okay, they're colored blue because they contain deoxygenated blood. So they transport the blood from the fetus, all right, and this blood contains urea, carbon dioxide, and other waste products, nitrogenous waste products. So they are transported out from the fetus, away from the heart of the fetus, and then through the umbilical arteries to the tiny blood capillaries of the fetus here. Then these waste products will diffuse out from the fetal blood capillaries into the mother's blood here, and then it will be transported out via the maternal veins, okay, to the mother's excretory organs. So the urea from the fetus will be excreted in the mother's urine, okay, from the kidneys. And then the carbon dioxide is excreted via respiration, via breathing, okay, the breathing mechanism out from the mother's lungs, okay. So the fetus sends all these excretory products to the mother to be excreted by the mother, right? So why is this vein called a vein, and why? And it carries, actually this vein is special because it carries the blood that is oxygenated back to the fetus. So if we look in relation to the fetus, the umbilical vein transports blood that contains that's rich in oxygen and nutrients like glucose and amino acids from the placenta back to the fetal heart, okay, back to the heart of the fetus to be distributed to the organs in the fetus, right? So it transports blood towards the heart of the fetus, okay. In relation to the fetus, the blood is flowing back to the heart. So that's why it's called the umbilical vein. Vein transports blood towards the heart, to the heart, okay. And the umbilical artery is called an artery because it transports blood away from the fetal heart through the umbilical cord here to the mother's blood, okay, for excretion. So that's why it's called an artery, because artery transports blood away from the heart, okay. So in relation to the fetus, it is an artery because the umbilical artery transports the blood that carries carbon dioxide, okay. The umbilical artery carries the blood that's rich in carbon dioxide and nitrogenous waste, such as urea, away from the fetus to the placenta, okay. So take note that umbilical vein and umbilical artery are different from the usual ones because umbilical vein is rich in oxygen, but umbilical artery is deoxygenated, contains deoxygenated blood and a lot of carbon dioxide. All right, so next, the placenta. So the placenta. Now first, the structure. The placenta consists of the embryonic tissues, that means tissues from the fetus or embryo here, the yellow part here, and it also contains tissues from the mother, called the maternal tissues, all right, or endometrial tissue, because it has, this part is actually part of the endometrium, all right, it's from the mother. The red part contains the maternal blood, okay. So its function is to attach the embryo or fetus to the wall of the uterus here, and then its main role is to allow diffusion of nutrients such as glucose and oxygen into the fetal blood capillaries from the maternal blood, right? Okay, then it also allows diffusion of urea and carbon dioxide from the fetal blood capillaries to the mother's blood for excretion. Now, so these are two functions, and the third function of the placenta is that it secretes hormones such as progesterone, estrogen, and also the HCG hormone, which is human chorionic gonadotropin hormone. Okay, right. Then here we see the maternal arteries that transport the blood, maternal blood, into the space here, which we call the intervillous space. Okay, so maternal blood supply in intervillous space. Okay, this pinkish colored space, and then the maternal veins transport the blood out from the intervillous space to the mother's organs. Okay, so let's look at the chorionic villi. What do you mean by chorionic villi? So in the placenta, we see many tiny finger-like projections sticking out like that, okay, in which the fetal blood capillaries are found. So these are called the chorionic villi, okay, from the word chorion and villi. So villi, we have studied about villi in the intestines, right? So intestines also have villi, which help to increase the what? Surface area for faster diffusion of substances. So similarly here, the tiny projections here, finger-like projections here, increase the total surface area for faster diffusion of and absorption of nutrients like glucose and oxygen from the mother's blood into the fetal blood capillaries. And also it helps in the faster diffusion of waste products from the fetal blood to the mother's blood. Okay, but notice that there's always a membrane that separates the fetal blood capillaries from the mother's blood. Okay, can you see this membrane here? Okay, sometimes it's called the placental membrane. So this membrane is very important to separate the fetal blood from the mother's blood. Okay, now all these red colored outlines here, this represent the membrane to separate the mother's blood from the fetal blood in the blood capillaries. Okay, so that mother's blood does not mix with the blood of the fetus. Now this is very important, especially in the case if the mother's blood group is different from the fetal blood group. Okay, so that the two types of blood, different types of blood, do not mix. All right, and there are other advantages also why the fetal blood capillaries are not connected, or the blood of the fetus does not mix with the blood of the mother. Okay, you'll find out more later. So it's important to know the functions of the placenta, right? And also to understand what the content of the umbilical vein and artery are. So just now we discussed the diagram and the role of the placenta and umbilical cord in fetal development. And these are the notes which are very good. You can copy them down. They are the smart notes. You can copy them down in your notebook. Okay, talking about the placenta and the functions. Three functions: to allow diffusion of nutrients and oxygen, hormones and antibodies from mother to fetus, removes toxic waste products from fetus, and allows carbon dioxide and urea to diffuse across the placenta from fetus to mother. The third function is that it acts as an endocrine gland and secretes three hormones. Okay, so then the function of the umbilical cord is that it contains the blood vessels, that is the umbilical vein and umbilical arteries, and it connects the fetus to the placenta and the mother's tissues. Now, function of umbilical vein, as we discussed just now, is to transport blood rich in oxygen and nutrients such as glucose and amino acids from placenta to fetus. And the function of the umbilical artery is to transport deoxygenated blood rich in carbon dioxide and nitrogenous waste such as urea away from the fetus to the placenta. So continuing on with the functions of the various parts, okay, of the uterus and the placenta and also the fetus. Now, the chorionic villi, all right, they are tiny projections in the placenta to increase the surface area for faster diffusion and absorption of nutrients from mother's blood into fetal blood capillaries. Already explained just now. And the function of the amniotic fluid, there are three here, in case it comes out in exam. So protects fetus from injuries by acting as a cushion and shock absorber, protects fetus from temperature changes by maintaining normal temperature, and allows the fetus to move freely inside the fluid for muscle and bone development. So let's look at this essay question on the placenta. State the importance of functions or roles of the placenta. 5 marks. Can be asked in the essay section, right? So we already discussed it, so let's just read through. The placenta is the site of exchange of substances between mother and fetus. It allows glucose and oxygen and amino acids, hormones, antibodies to be absorbed and diffused from the mother's blood into the fetal blood, as shown here. It also allows carbon dioxide, nitrogenous waste, such as urea, to be absorbed and diffused from the fetal blood capillaries here into the mother's blood. So it's a site of exchange of substances between mother and fetus. Secondly, the placenta acts as an endocrine organ or endocrine gland because it secretes hormones during pregnancy. Now, in the 4th month of pregnancy, the corpus luteum in the ovary degenerates and stops secreting progesterone. So the placenta will replace the corpus luteum in producing the progesterone and estrogen, so as to maintain the thickness of the endometrium for the growth of the embryo, and also progesterone and estrogen have other functions, okay, during pregnancy. Now C, one more function, if you're asked to give one more function, then you can write the placenta gives protection to the fetus. In what way? Now, in one way that can give protection to the fetus is that the antibodies, placenta allows antibodies to pass from the mother to the fetus. Okay, antibodies can diffuse from the mother's blood into the fetal blood capillaries. So these antibodies give temporary passive immunity towards against some diseases. Okay, because it's not the fetus itself or himself or herself that produces the antibodies. The antibodies come from another source, and that's from the dear mother, right? For protection of the fetus against diseases. But this immunity only lasts about 6 months. The next question, question 5. Justify the necessity for separate fetal and maternal blood circulatory systems. 4 or 5 marks, right? So here we can see there is a membrane that separates the blood capillaries of the fetus from the blood of the mother. Okay, this membrane in red. Okay, so why is it that the fetus and the mother has separate blood circulatory systems that do not connect to each other? And the blood of the two organisms or two individuals do not mix. So let's look at this essay question, which can be asked in the exam, right? Justify the necessity for separate fetal and maternal blood circulatory systems. So the blood of the mother and fetus do not mix at all, as they are separated by a thin membrane. For example, at the chorionic villi here, you can see the red outline here. This is the thin membrane in the placenta that separates the blood of the fetus and the blood of the mother. Okay, so the blood of the fetus is in the blood capillaries here, and then there's this membrane that separate the capillaries from the maternal blood in the space here, right? Now, this is important because the separate blood circulatory systems will help to protect the fetus from certain dangerous chemical substances such as toxins and bacteria that can be absorbed into the fetal blood if there is no membrane here, right, to separate the two types of blood. Okay, so certain toxins and bacteria can be prevented by this barrier, okay, that is provided by this membrane, and it can prevent this membrane can prevent these toxins and bacteria from being absorbed into the fetal blood to a certain extent. Okay. Now, secondly, this will prevent the thin fetal blood vessels, such as the blood capillaries here, from bursting due to the mother's high blood pressure. So let's say the fetal blood capillaries here are joined to the maternal arteries. What will happen? The high blood pressure inside these maternal arteries will cause the thin fetal blood vessels here to burst, and this will endanger the fetus. Okay, so that's why these two circulatory systems, that of the mother and the fetus, are not joined together directly. Okay? Now C, it prevents agglutination or clumping of red blood cells or blood clots from happening in the fetus if the fetus does not have the same blood group as the mother. Okay, so the blood of the fetus and the blood of the mother do not mix because this helps to prevent or clumping of red blood cells, especially if the blood groups are different. For example, mother can have blood group A and the father can have the blood group B. So the fetus can inherit the blood group B from the father, right? So if fetus has blood group B and mother has blood group A, these two blood groups are incompatible. If they were to mix together, these two blood types were to mix together, then antibodies can be released by the blood in the blood, and it can cause the clumping of red blood cells of the fetus, right? And also blood clots can happen in the fetus, so this is very dangerous and can cause harm to the fetus. That's why the blood of the fetus and the mother do not mix, and the fetus and mother have separate blood circulatory systems. Okay, so take note of this question and answer. Now, number 2, however, the thin membrane layer, okay, the thin membrane represented by the red outline here, right, is not able to prevent certain substances from being absorbed, for example, drugs, medication, cigarette smoke, and alcohol that is ingested by the mother, and viruses such as HIV virus, which causes AIDS, and rubella virus. So all these substances and organisms can pass through the thin membrane here from the mother's blood into the fetal blood in the blood capillaries. So if they are absorbed into the fetal blood circulation, they can disrupt the fetal development because they'll be transported by the umbilical vein. Okay. Finally, let's discuss some formative exercises on this topic. So formative exercise 15.4. Number 1, explain the early process of development of the embryo. 5 marks. Now you can try the question yourself first, the questions here, and then check the answers later. Okay, so let's look at the answer now. So the early embryonic development involves the following stages and processes. Now after fertilization, the single-celled zygote form divides many times by mitosis. So the processes are all in red, and then the stages are in blue. Okay, so the zygote divides many times by mitosis to form a solid ball of cells called the morula. Next, the morula develops into a hollow sphere known as the blastocyst. Then the blastocyst attaches itself in the endometrium through implantation, where it undergoes further mitosis and develops from an embryo for the first 8 weeks to become a fetus from the 9th week till birth. Okay. Now, secondly, what is the main function of the HCG hormone? 4 marks. So the main function of HCG hormone is to stimulate the corpus luteum in the ovary, continue to secrete the hormones estrogen and progesterone in the early stages of pregnancy. Then these two hormones, estrogen and progesterone, help to maintain the thickness of the endometrium for the growth and development of the embryo. Number 3, explain 3 roles of the placenta. 3 marks. Firstly, the placenta functions as an endocrine organ in that it secretes the hormones progesterone and estrogen. Secondly, it also serves as the site for exchange of substances and materials between the fetus and the mother. For example, oxygen and nutrients, such as glucose and amino acids, diffuse across the placenta from mother to fetus, whereas urea and carbon dioxide and other waste substances diffuse across the placenta from the fetus to the mother. Now, one more function is that the placenta allows antibodies to diffuse from the mother's blood into the fetal blood, and thus it helps the fetus to obtain temporary passive immunity against certain diseases. Okay, number 4, state what might happen if maternal blood mixes with the fetal blood. 3 marks. So this is like a HOTS question, right? 3 marks. So if there's mixing of fetus and mother's blood, agglutination and hemolysis of red blood cells may occur. These reactions happen if the mother's blood group is different from that of the fetus. So the mother's blood may produce antibodies to act against the fetal red blood cells or erythrocytes, okay, if the blood groups are incompatible. So the fetal red blood cells will clump together during agglutination, and this can block blood vessels and cause danger, okay, to the fetus. Another reaction is that the red blood cells can be destroyed in the process of hemolysis because of the production of certain antibodies. Right, that's all for this lesson. Thanks for viewing, and please do share, like, and subscribe to my channel. Goodbye for now.